My name is Audrey Vance. I'm 32 years old. Last Monday at 7:15 a.m., 2 police officers stood in my living room with a warrant for my arrest for stealing my own sister's identity. "She's the unstable one in this family," Vanessa screamed at them, tears streaming down her face while wearing her perfect cream cardigan. "She's dangerous, she's spiraling, and she's been forging my documents for years to ruin me." My parents joined on speakerphone from Tampa, their voices cold and certain. "Officer, Audrey has been mentally unstable since she was 12, my mother said firmly. "We have all the proof." The same sister who makes a fortune selling Pure Boundaries courses and telling strangers how to escape toxic families was now destroying mine, with a smile behind her tears. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just looked at the lead detective and said calmly, "Please let me bring one folder from the closet." They had no idea what was inside. They had no idea that folder was about to destroy everything they believed. Before I tell you what happened when they finally opened that folder, please take a moment to like and subscribe. Drop your location and local time in the comments. I want to know where you're listening from. Now let me take you back to where it all began. The first thing you need to understand about my family is that I was never the daughter in the photographs. If you ever drove up to the house I grew up in, a small craftsman in Lafayette, Colorado, about 25 minutes from Boulder, you would have walked through the front door and seen a long wall in the hallway. 4 large portraits of my sister, going from her first communion to her high school graduation. 1 photograph of me, taken when I was 6 years old, leaning against a wooden fence. I am wearing a yellow sweater. The fence still exists in our backyard, but the photograph was never updated. Every time I came home for a holiday, I would adjust that frame because it always tilted a little to the left, as if even the wall could not commit to me. My mother is Beverly Vance. She was an elementary school nurse for 23 years. She has a voice that sounds patient even when it isn't, and a vocabulary she used like a sorting hat. Vanessa was creative. Vanessa was magnetic. Vanessa was sweet. I was dramatic. I was sensitive. I was intense. I was eventually difficult. My father is Theodore Vance. Everyone calls him Ted. He worked as a structural engineer for the State Highway Department until he retired 3 years ago. My father does not speak much. When he does, the sentences are short and the room listens because it is rare. I learned early that his silence was not neutral. His silence was a vote. My sister is Vanessa, 2 years younger than me. She has been called Nessa since she was 4 years old and decided her full name made her sound, in her words, like someone's grandmother. My mother thought that was charming. My mother thought everything about her was charming. By the time I was 9 years old, I had figured out the system. The same behavior, in our house, had 2 different names depending on which daughter performed it. If Nessa cried, she was sensitive in a beautiful way. If I cried, I was making a scene. If Nessa wanted attention, she was creative. If I wanted attention, I was needy. If Nessa told a lie, it was a misunderstanding. If I told the truth, it was causing problems. I remember one summer afternoon in 2003. I was 9. My mother was at the back fence, talking to our neighbor, Mrs. Drummond, and I was crouched in the grass behind the hydrangea, doing nothing in particular. I heard my mother say, "Audrey gets so worked up over the smallest things. Nessa just lets it roll off her." I sat very still in the dirt. I was not worked up. I had not been worked up in days, but my mother had described me to a neighbor with such certainty that I understood, for the first time, that the version of me other people knew was a version my mother was writing. I could not edit it. I could only watch it appear. When I was 11, I started writing things down. Not a diary. Diaries were for feelings, and I had already learned that feelings were inadmissible in our house. What I needed were facts. The first thing I ever recorded was a piece of paper folded in quarters, with one sentence written on it in pencil. Nessa took my homework on Tuesday. She gave it back without page 3. Page 3 had a sticker on it. I dated it. October 17th, 2005. I put it inside an empty Skechers shoebox under my bed. I did not know yet what evidence was. I just knew that memory wasn't enough. By 11, I had already lost too many arguments to my own remembered version of events. I needed something my mother couldn't talk over. I had no idea at 11 that the box under my bed was a rehearsal. The real folder began on October 14th, 2006. That was the day of my grandmother's 75th birthday party in Boulder. My grandmother, Constance Vance, my father's mother, lived in a tall wooden house on a quiet street north of the university. The house smelled like cedar and rose-scented hand cream. The porch had 2 rocking chairs that nobody ever sat in. We drove up that morning in my father's Subaru Outback. I was 12. Nessa was 10. The drive took about 25 minutes on Highway 36. The aspens had turned that week, and the red leaves were sticking to the hood of the car when we pulled into Grandma Constance's driveway. My mother handed Nessa the wrapped present to carry into the house. I was given the card. The card was thin and forgettable, which suited my role. The party had maybe 20 people, cousins, neighbors, 2 friends of my grandmother from her old church. Janice, my mother's younger sister, was there with her daughter. My cousin, Vivian Cole, who was 14 at the time and was reading a paperback in the corner because she did not care for small talk. I remember her looking up at me twice that afternoon, the way someone looks up when they're not quite sure what they're seeing. After cake, my grandmother went upstairs for something. When she came back down, she was holding the cedar drawer of her jewelry chest, and the drawer was empty in the wrong place. Her emerald ring, the one her own mother had left her, the one she had told me, when I was 7, that I would inherit one day, was gone. The room got quiet in a way I had never heard before. Nessa, perfect pink-cheeked Nessa, said in a small voice, "I think Audrey asked to try it on earlier. She said she just wanted to see how it looked. I told her not to." My grandmother looked at me. I looked at her. I had not touched the ring. I had not been upstairs. My mother walked to the guest room where my coat and small leather purse were sitting on the bed. She opened my jewelry box, an orange-shaped plastic case that played a music box tune when you lifted the lid. The emerald ring was inside. Of course it was inside. I had not opened that case all day. I had not opened it in weeks. My grandmother looked at me again. This time she looked like she did not know who I was. My sister looked at me like she finally did. On the drive home that night, I sat in the back seat and counted the streetlights between Boulder and Lafayette. There were 38 of them. I counted because I could not cry. My parents thought I was asleep. They were wrong. My mother said, "She needs help, Ted. She's the unstable one in this family. We have to do something before she ruins another holiday." My father said, "Make the appointment." That was the first time I heard the sentence, "the unstable one in this family." It would be repeated in some form every single year of my life until I was 32 years old. 2 weeks later, my mother drove me to a child psychologist's office on Pearl Street in Boulder. The office was on the 2nd floor above a yoga studio. The waiting room had a saltwater aquarium with a small clownfish named Murphy. The psychologist's name was Dr. Eleanor Pritchard. She was about 50. She wore a gray cardigan that was the same color as her hair. Dr. Pritchard saw me twice. She asked me about school and about Nessa and about what I liked to read. She did not ask me about the ring. I think now, looking back, that she did not ask because she already knew. After the second session, she asked my mother and father to step into her office without me. I sat in the waiting room and watched Murphy the clownfish go in slow circles around a piece of plastic coral. I could hear them through the door. Dr. Pritchard's voice was low and steady. I caught one sentence clearly. "You should be watching the other daughter very carefully. This girl is not the one I'm worried about." When my parents came out, My mother's face was the careful blank she wore when she had decided not to listen. She paid at the front desk. The receptionist handed me a small blue visitor sticker with the number 0419 printed on it. I peeled it off my sweater and put it in my pocket without looking at it. We did not go back for a third session. That night, my mother told me Dr. Pritchard had said I was going through a phase. She put a folded piece of paper into a drawer in the kitchen, behind the rubber bands and the unused birthday candles. She told me to be a better sister to Nessa. I knew, even at 12, that going through a phase was not what Dr. Pritchard had said. I had heard her. I had heard the sentence about the other daughter. I did not know how to make my mother hear it too. That night, I took the Skechers shoebox out from under my bed. I unfolded the note from 2005. I added the visitor sticker. I wrote the date underneath. I called the box, in my own head, the keeping box. 1 year later, I moved everything into a manila folder. I did not keep the sticker because it meant something. I kept it because no one else was going to. The folder grew slowly, the way scar tissue does. I do not want to spend an hour walking you through every entry, because the point of a pattern is not the individual events. The point of a pattern is that the events are interchangeable. Once you see one, you see all of them. But there are 4 that I have to tell you about, because they explain how the folder got thick. When I was 15, in April of 2009, Nessa was 13 and in 8th grade at the middle school next to my high school. She forged my signature on a hallway pass to skip a class. I did not know about it until I came home one Thursday afternoon and found my mother sitting at the kitchen table with the photocopy in her hand. The photocopy had been faxed over by the assistant principal that morning. My mother said, "Audrey, you're the older one. Why would you do this to your sister?" I looked at the signature. It was not mine. The slant was wrong. The crossbar on the T in my last name was too short, like someone trying to imitate handwriting from memory. I told my mother this. She said I was making excuses. I was banned from attending my first prom. Nessa cried about how guilty she felt. My mother told her she was being so brave. That night, I asked the assistant principal for a copy of the photocopy. I told him I was studying it because I wanted to learn from my mistake. He gave me one. I took it home. I put it in the folder. The folder, at 15, was about 1/4 inch thick. That was the year I learned forgery had a feeling. It feels like being asked to apologize for the shape of your own handwriting. When I was 20, in the fall of 2013, I was a sophomore at the University of Denver. My mother had given Nessa a supplemental card on a Chase Sapphire account that was nominally in my name, because I was the older daughter, and because the university required a parent-linked card for emergency tuition payments. Nessa was supposed to use it for textbooks. In 3 months, she spent $4,800. When the statement came, Nessa cried at the kitchen table and said Audrey had taken the card and used it on a boyfriend. There was no boyfriend. There was no card removal. I was in Denver. The statement showed transactions in Boulder at coffee shops and at a boutique on Pearl Street. 6 of the transactions had timestamps that matched, to the minute, hours when I was sitting in my midterm exams 2 hours away. I had the proctor logs. My father got on the phone and said, "We'll handle it as a family. Don't make this any harder than it needs to be." They took the money out of my next semester's tuition. I worked 2 jobs that spring to make it up. I made photocopies of the statement, the proctor logs, and the timestamps. Into the folder they went. The folder, at 20, was about 1 inch thick. That was the year I learned timestamps were my friends. When I was 25, in November of 2018, we all went to my Aunt Janice's house in Fort Collins for Thanksgiving. There were 14 people at the table. Halfway through the meal, Nessa, 23 years old by then, leaned forward and said, in that gentle voice she had been perfecting since she was 10, "I'm only telling you all because I'm worried. Audrey has been seeing a therapist for stalking a coworker. She needs help. I think she's going to do something. I had never seen a therapist for stalking a coworker. There was no coworker. There was no stalking. There was no therapist. There was Nessa, and there was a quiet pumpkin pie cooling in the kitchen, and there were 14 relatives who all looked at me at the same moment and decided I was a person they had never really known. I did not defend myself. I had learned by then that defending myself in front of an audience my parents had already convinced was a waste of breath. That night, at 9:14 p.m., my cousin Vivian, who was 26 and an accountant in Fort Collins, sent me an iMessage. That didn't sit right with me. I'm sorry I didn't say anything at the table. I want you to know I'm sorry. It was the first time in 25 years that anyone outside my immediate family had quietly admitted to me that they saw it. I did not respond right away, but I saved the screenshot. I did not know yet how important Vivian would become. When I was 28, in June of 2022, my best friend from college, Pippa Ostlund, was planning her wedding. Nessa called Pippa and said she was secretly organizing a surprise for me on Pippa's behalf, and could Pippa lend her $3,200 to pay a vendor, and please not tell me about it. There was no surprise. There was no vendor. There was a Venmo trail that ended, 4 days later, at a hair studio in Cherry Creek called Astra. Pippa called me 4 months later, the week before her wedding, in tears, asking if I had taken the money. I paid Pippa back from my savings. I did not tell her I had not taken it. I just paid her, and I said I was sorry it had happened. Some friendships only survive if you let them keep the easier version of the story. Pippa is still my friend. She does not know, even now, the whole truth. I put the Venmo screenshots in the folder. By 28, the folder was thick enough to be a textbook. By 28, I had stopped showing up only in my sister's stories. I had started showing up in her receipts. There was one more entry, from the summer of 2020, that I did not understand at the time. Nessa sent me a text in July. Hey, what's Mom's maiden name again? Doing a family tree thing for class. She was 24 years old and not in a class. I sent the maiden name. It was such a small thing that I almost did not save the message. I saved it anyway. It is on page 19 of the folder. In October of 2006, it would have looked like nothing. By March of 2026, it was the beginning of the timeline that broke the room. If you have ever been called dramatic for telling the truth, or sensitive for noticing the pattern, or unstable for keeping a record, drop one of those words in the comments. I read everyone. The vocabulary is always the same, isn't it? By the time I was 32, I had built a life that did not look anything like the house in Lafayette. I moved to Denver after college and never moved back. I rented for 9 years, and in 2023 I bought a small condo in Lohi, the Lower Highlands, just across the river from downtown. It has 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, a galley kitchen, and a window that gets the late afternoon light. There is a hallway closet behind the kitchen that I have used for the entire time I have lived here as a filing room. I work as a senior forensic auditor at Aspen Ridge Insurance Group. I have been there since 2018. I was promoted to senior in January of 2025. I am a certified fraud examiner. My job every day is to read documents until I find the place where someone has lied in writing. I am very good at it. The framed certificate from the ACFE is on the wall above my desk. The desk has 3 monitors. I keep a password manager open in a pinned tab. I run my own credit report once a quarter through the firm's monitoring service. Or, I thought I did. My friends are small in number and durable. Pippa from college, who married a kind man named Owen in 2022 and lives in Cherry Creek. Bram Ellsworth, an attorney who used to be a forensic accountant before law school and who started consulting for our firm in 2021. Vivian, my cousin, who I had texted off and on for 8 years since that Thanksgiving in 2018, but had not seen in person since 2014. I had not gone no contact with my parents. I had gone low contact. 3 visits a year, 2 phone calls a month. I kept the door cracked, mostly for my grandmother, and partly because hope is the hardest thing to put down. I was about to learn it was the most expensive thing I had ever kept. My grandmother Constance had moved into a memory care facility in Boulder in 2019. By 2024, she no longer recognized me. I still drove up twice a month. I read to her sometimes from a book she had loved called A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. She did not ask who I was. I kept the visitor sticker from her facility, a small green oval with the number 0816 on it, in the folder, right behind the blue one from Dr. Pritchard's office in 2006. 2 stickers, 18 years apart. Same handwriting, hers, on the sign-in sheet, when she was still herself. That was the only handwriting of my grandmother's I still had. My sister, by contrast, had become something I could no longer avoid even if I wanted to. In 2021, Nessa rebranded herself. She had been a flight attendant for a regional airline for 2 years, then a real estate assistant for 1. In the spring of 2021, she launched a TikTok account called Pure Boundaries with Nessa. By the end of that year, she had 30,000 followers. By the spring of 2023, she had 412,000 on TikTok and 188,000 on Instagram. She sold a paid course called Healing from Toxic Family. It cost $389. She had a signature line that closed every reel. My truth is sacred. I did not follow her account. Her reels still found me. The algorithm has a sense of humor. One reel from February of 2026, filmed in Aspen, had 1.3 million views. In it, she said in her gentle voice, "Sometimes the most toxic person in your life is the one closest to you. Sometimes she's even your sister." The top comment had 14,000 likes. "Nessa, you saved my life with your course." My sister had monetized the exact word our mother had used on me at 12. She charged $389 a head for it. I had built my entire career on catching what other people hide. I did not know, that February, that my sister had been hiding inside my own social security number for 6 years. The call came on a Thursday afternoon in early December of 2025. It was 4:38 p.m. I was at my desk at home, working on a third-party audit. The number on my phone was unfamiliar. I almost let it go to voicemail. I picked up because my grandmother's memory care unit sometimes called from rotating numbers. A man's voice, polite, professional. "Hi, this is Hollis Yardley calling from Tate & Brennan Collections regarding an account ending in 8261. Am I speaking with Audrey Vance?" I said yes. He said the account had been delinquent for 14 months. The balance was a little over $11,000. He needed to know how I would like to handle it. I asked him what kind of account. A consumer credit card. Issued in 2022. The original creditor was a regional bank I had never used. I asked him to send me the documentation in writing. He did. The PDF came in 7 minutes. The cardholder name on the application was Audra M. Vance. The address was a UPS store mailbox in Aurora, Colorado, that I had never been to. The phone number on file ended in numbers I did not recognize. I sat at my desk for 22 minutes without moving. Then I did the only thing my training had taught me to do. I opened a spreadsheet. I pulled my credit reports from all 3 bureaus that night. The PDFs came back 46 pages long. There were 11 accounts on those reports that I had never opened. The total outstanding balance across all 11 was $89,200. The largest single line item was a personal consolidation loan for $63,500, issued in March of 2024. The application address was the same UPS store mailbox in Aurora. I had credit monitoring through my employer. It had never flagged a single account. The reason became obvious once I started reading. 9 of the 11 applications had been filed under slight name variations. Audra Vance, A.M. Vance, Audrey M. Vance, with a middle initial that does not exist on my birth certificate, with addresses I did not live at, and phone numbers that were not mine. The monitoring service's matching algorithm had never connected them to my actual profile. It was the same trick we caught sophisticated fraudsters using in our audits twice a month at Aspen Ridge. I had simply never thought to run it on myself. Over the next 3 weeks, I built a forensic timeline. I pulled signature exemplars from every credit application. The signatures on all 11 were the same hand. The hand was not mine. I cross-checked the originating IP addresses on the 7 accounts that had been opened online. 6 of them resolved to a residential Wi-Fi router whose Spectrum bill had been screenshotted to me 3.5 years earlier by my sister when she had asked to borrow $800 and wanted to prove she was trying to pay her own internet bill. I matched the burner phone number from 3 of the accounts to a number Nessa had texted me from once in 2021 when she had been locked out of her primary cell phone for 48 hours and needed to reach me about a family emergency that turned out not to be one. I drove past the UPS store in East Aurora on a Saturday morning in January. I parked across the street. I sat in my car. I did not go in. I had already found on Instagram a photograph of Nessa standing outside that exact storefront, captioned errands, blessings, gratitude, dated June of 2023. I worked on the file most nights from 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. after my regular audit work was done. I built it the way I built every case file at Aspen Ridge, chronologically, with Bates-stamped page numbers in the lower right corner of every exhibit. I cross-referenced names, dates, IP addresses, phone numbers, and addresses against 3 separate databases. I kept the working files on an external drive that I unplugged from my computer every night and stored in a small safe behind a bookshelf. The forensic auditor in me knew that the chain of custody on my own evidence would, eventually, be questioned. I made sure that chain was clean. The strangest part was the calm. I had expected to feel rage, the kind that ruins sleep. Instead, I felt something closer to relief. 20 years of small things, the homework page, the hall pass, the supplemental card, the Thanksgiving dinner, the wedding loan, had finally arrived at a destination I could name out loud. I was no longer the older daughter who could not let things go. I was a forensic auditor with a documented case. On January 29, 2026, I filed an FTC identity theft report. The report number was 25-IDT-08229. I saved the confirmation PDF. I did not file a police report yet. I wanted the full forensic timeline first. I wanted everything in order. I was a forensic auditor. I did not file incomplete cases. That decision saved me in March. In the first week of February, I flew to Tampa for a weekend at my parents' new place. They had moved from Lafayette in 2024 to a townhouse near the bay. I did not say anything about my investigation. I made small talk about my grandmother. I ate my mother's pasta primavera. I helped my father move a bookshelf. I left on a Sunday evening flight. Frontier Airlines Flight 408, scheduled for 8:42 p.m. departure. The next morning, on the drive to the airport, my mother said something I almost did not catch. "Audrey, have you been pulling your credit lately?" I told her no. She nodded. She was smiling in a small way that did not reach her eyes. "You know how Nessa worries about you. She just wants you to be okay." On the plane back to Denver, I realized something I should have realized at 12. The folder was not ready yet. But the people I was filing against were already moving. The first sign came from Vivian. On Monday, March 2nd, 2026. At 6:17 a.m., my phone buzzed on the nightstand. Vivian. Audrey, I just heard something at brunch yesterday. I don't know what's going on, but I screenshotted something Nessa sent your mom 3 weeks ago. I think you need to see it. The screenshot loaded. It was an iMessage thread between Nessa and my mother, dated February 8th, 2026. Nessa had sent it without realizing it had been forwarded into a small private family chat that included Vivian's mother Janice, who had then unmuted the thread for 14 seconds and then muted it again, long enough for Vivian to see and screenshot. The message read, "Mom, listen. If she keeps digging, we need to file first. We need her to look unwell before she has time to talk." I read it 3 times. I sat up in bed. I did not turn on the light. I made coffee. I did not call my lawyer yet. 8 minutes later, my doorbell rang. 2 officers were standing in the hallway. The lead officer was a man in his 40s with a thick mustache and tired eyes. His badge read, Officer Kearns, number 1182. The second officer was a younger woman who never spoke. Behind them, in the corridor of my building, stood my sister Vanessa, in a perfect cream cardigan, holding her phone with one hand and dabbing her eyes with the other. Officer Kearns held up a piece of paper. "Ms. Vance, we have a warrant for your arrest. We'd like you to come with us voluntarily, but we are prepared to detain you. The charge is identity theft." I looked at the warrant. I looked at my sister. I looked back at Officer Kearns. "Officer," I said, "may I bring one folder from the hallway closet?" He looked at the closet. He looked at me. "As long as it's not a weapon, yes." I asked him if I could call my attorney. He said yes. I called Bram Ellsworth. He answered on the second ring. I told him in 11 seconds what was happening. He told me, "Audrey, listen carefully. Do not answer any question without me. The folder stays closed until I say so. I'm 12 minutes from the station. Got it?" I said yes. While I was on the phone, my parents joined Officer Kearns's speakerphone from Tampa. "Officer," my mother said firmly, "Audrey has been mentally unstable since she was 12. We have all the proof. She has been forging documents. She has been threatening Nessa. We have signed sworn statements. Please be careful with her." My father said nothing. I heard him breathing. Vanessa, in the hallway, was now crying with her face turned toward another tenant's open door, like a woman who wanted to be seen suffering. "She's the unstable one in this family. She's been forging my documents to ruin me. I have all the loan applications. I have everything." Officer Kearns asked me to put my hands behind my back. He did it gently, almost apologetically. The cuffs were not tight. They were the kind they use for cooperative arrestees. He explained that I would be uncuffed in the interview room. I told him I understood. I did not look at my sister. I asked, before he led me out, if I could grab the folder. I walked to the hallway closet. The closet has 3 shelves. The bottom shelf is winter boots. The middle shelf is documents I no longer need but keep out of habit. The top shelf, behind a small box of replacement light bulbs, is a banker's box. The box is gray. The label on the side says, in my own handwriting from 2013, personal, long-term. I did not pull the box down. I lifted the lid carefully and removed a single manila folder from the front of the file. The folder was thick, about 1/2 inch, and it was sealed with 2 rubber bands. It had 6 colored tabs sticking out of the top. I did not open it. I tucked it under my arm. I closed the box. I closed the closet. I turned around. Officer Kearns nodded. On the way down to the patrol car, I called my office. I left a brief, calm voicemail for my supervisor, telling her there had been a personal emergency and that I would be unreachable for the day. I did not say where I was going. I knew, within hours, that someone would need to know more. The drive to the station took 22 minutes. I sat in the back seat of the Ford Explorer. The plastic was cold. The radio was off. The morning sun came in low across 15th Street. The last snow of the season was melting in the gutters. Bram called me back as we pulled into the station. "Audrey, listen to me. They will read you your rights. You will not answer questions. You will give them your name, your date of birth, and the word attorney. That is all. The folder stays closed until I say so. Got it?" I said yes. I had been waiting for someone in a uniform to ask the right question for 20 years. The next 90 minutes would tell me if I had been preparing for the right room. If you've ever sat across from someone who is about to read 20 years of your life out loud, please subscribe. The next part is the part I rehearsed in my head for 2 decades. Stay with me. The interview room was on the second floor of Denver Police District 1. Room 4B. The lighting was fluorescent and the table was a flat sheet of brushed metal that had been screwed to the floor. There was a small red camera in the upper corner near the ceiling. There was a paper cup of water that I did not drink. There were 2 chairs on my side of the table. Officer Kearns uncuffed me at the doorway, as promised. He told me an investigator would be in shortly. He closed the door. Bram arrived 4 minutes later. He was a thin man in his early 40s with a careful gray suit and a manila notepad. He sat down next to me, opened the notepad, and uncapped a black pen. "Calm. Slow. Let her open," he said. The investigator came in 2 minutes after that. Her name was Detective Maren Whitfield. She was 51. She wore a dark gray blazer and small silver hoop earrings. She carried a thick red case file. She introduced herself, sat down, and read me my rights from a card she did not seem to need. "Ms. Vance, I'd like to talk to you about a complaint that was filed against you on Sunday night, March 1st, by your sister, Vanessa Vance." Bram nodded once. I said nothing. Detective Whitfield opened the case file. She read me a summary. 11 fraudulent credit accounts in the name of Vanessa Vance. Outstanding balance approximately $89,000. A pattern, the complaint alleged, of escalating impersonation, signature forgery, and emotional harassment. The complainant had submitted a psychological evaluation from October of 2006, documenting the alleged perpetrator's long-standing mental instability. The complainant had also submitted notarized sworn statements from both parents. The detective said, "Ms. Vance, the evaluation from October 2006 describes a documented history. Your parents have submitted sworn statements consistent with what your sister has described. Do you understand the federal charges you are facing?" I said I did. She slid a laptop across the table and turned it toward us. She pressed play. The video was a witness statement Vanessa had recorded the night before, in her own living room. The lighting was warm. There was a copy of a book called Boundaries on the coffee table behind her, angled toward the camera. She was wearing the cream cardigan. She was crying. "She's the unstable one in this family. She always has been. We have a psychological evaluation from when she was 12. My parents and I are heartbroken, but we can't protect her anymore. My truth is sacred, and my truth is that my sister has been spiraling, and now she's stolen from me." The video ended. Detective Whitfield closed the laptop. She looked at me. I watched her face for a moment. I had spent 8 years reading the faces of people across interview tables, in audit conferences, in HR meetings where a controller was about to lose his certification. I knew what a half-decided face looked like. Detective Whitfield's was half-decided. She had read the file. She had read the affidavits. She had been a detective long enough to know that 90% of cases land where the paperwork points, and the paperwork on her desk pointed at me. She had also been a detective long enough I could see to know what a calm defendant looked like. And a calm defendant, in identity theft cases, was often the most dangerous kind. The forensic auditor who could lie in writing, the older sibling with access, the organized one who kept records. I matched a profile. Bram had warned me about this in the car. Ms. Vance, do you have anything to say in your defense? I looked at Bram. He nodded. I placed the folder on the table. I slid it, very gently, across the brushed metal until it stopped in front of her. Detective Whitfield, I said, before you charge me, I'd like you to open this. Start with tab 3. It's chronological. You'll see it for yourself. She looked at the folder. She looked at me. She looked at the folder again. She opened tab 3. The first page in tab 3 was a single sheet of paper, laminated, with a small blue visitor sticker glued to the center, number 0419. Below the sticker, in a hand I had used when I was 12 years old, were 3 lines: Dr. Eleanor Pritchard, Pearl Street, Boulder, October 14th, 2006. Note to parents withheld. The second page in tab 3 was a photocopy of the full 2006 psychological evaluation, not the cropped version Vanessa had submitted to police, the complete document. 6 pages. At the bottom of page 4 in Dr. Pritchard's typed clinical notes was this sentence: Note to parents, I recommend evaluating the younger sibling. The dynamic in this family is concerning, and the wrong child is presenting. I will not be able to continue treatment of the older child unless the parents engage in family therapy and consider evaluation of the younger sibling. Detective Whitfield read the line. She read it again, more slowly. She set the page down. She looked at the bottom of the page. There was a stamp in the corner. Authentic copy released to subject Audrey Vance, November 18th, 2025. She looked up at me. You contacted Dr. Pritchard? Last November, I said. She remembered me. She had been waiting 20 years for someone to ask the right question, too. She is 71 years old. She still practices part-time. Her records are intact. The detective said nothing for 6 seconds. She turned to tab 1. Tab 1 was the current evidence, 11 fraudulent accounts. Account origination IPs, 6 of which matched the residential Wi-Fi router whose Spectrum bill my sister had once screenshotted to me in 2022. I had a clean printout of that Spectrum bill, side by side with the application metadata, and the 2 were identical down to the modem serial number. 3 accounts opened from a burner phone number that matched a number my sister had used to text me from in 2021. A UPS store mailbox at 18B East Aurora, flagged on the credit applications, paired with a photograph from Vanessa's own Instagram account, dated June of 2023, in which she stood directly in front of that mailbox storefront, captioned Errands, Blessings, Gratitude. Signature exemplars. The forged signatures on all 11 applications, side by side with my actual signature card from the Bellwether Credit Union, opened in 2019. The forensic comparison was visible to the naked eye. The capital A in Audrey leaned too far to the right. The Y had a hook the wrong direction. And then there was page 7. Page 7 was the documents Vanessa had submitted with her March 1st complaint. The loan application she claimed I had forged in her name to ruin her. The signatures on those documents read, Vanessa Vance. The forensic comparison showed something Vanessa had not anticipated. The handwriting on those forged Vanessa Vance signatures matched, in slant, in pressure, in the formation of the V and the second N. The same hand that had forged the Audrey Vance signatures on the 11 fraudulent accounts. The same person had forged both sides. Detective Whitfield put the page down and rubbed the bridge of her nose. I had seen forensic auditors make that exact gesture. It was the gesture of someone realizing the file they were reading was upside down. She turned to tab 2. Tab 2 was the 20-year pattern. 14 entries, chronologically. The hall pass forgery from 2009, the supplemental credit card from 2013, Thanksgiving 2018, the wedding loan from 2022. 8 more I have not described, because the point of a pattern is the pattern. She did not read them all. She read 3. She closed the tab. You kept a log, she said. I kept a record, I said. She tapped the cover of the folder twice with her index finger. It was a small gesture, but I recognized it. It was the gesture an auditor makes when she has just realized that the deeper she goes, the more she will find. On the video screen behind us, my sister, in the still frame paused on her own face, was caught mid-sentence with her mouth slightly open. She did not know the folder was open. She would not know for another 6 minutes. Detective Whitfield turned to tab 1 again. She looked at the FTC identity theft report I had filed on January 29, 2026, 6 weeks before Vanessa filed her own complaint. She held the FTC printout in her right hand and Vanessa's March 1st filing in her left. She looked at the dates. 31 days, she said, almost to herself. The wrong way around. She picked up the desk phone. She asked a paralegal in the next office to bring Vanessa Vance in for follow-up questions in room 4A. She asked another colleague to put a hold on processing my charges. She asked Bram if he wanted to be present in 4A. Bram said yes. While they waited, the desk phone in 4B rang. Detective Whitfield picked it up. She listened for a moment. She covered the receiver. There is a Vivian Cole on the line. She says she has corroborating documentation. She says she has been keeping it since 2019. I nodded. Detective Whitfield put the call on speaker. Detective Whitfield, Vivian said, her voice level and clear. I have additional documentation that corroborates everything my cousin has shown you. I have screenshots, group chat exports, and dates. I have been keeping them since November of 2019. I did not know she had her own folder. I'm sending the Google Drive link to your department email now. For 20 years, I had thought I was alone in noticing. I had not been alone. I had just been alone in keeping the receipts. The detective thanked her, ended the call, and walked into room 4A. I sat alone with Bram for 2 minutes. He did not look at me. He was writing something on his notepad. I looked at the folder, which Detective Whitfield had left on the table between us. The blue visitor sticker was still visible at the edge of tab 3. Number 0419. I thought about Dr. Pritchard, who had been waiting 20 years for somebody to ask the right question. I thought about Vivian, who had been quiet for 20 years and was about to send a folder she had built alone in another city, while my own folder grew in a closet 2 hours south of her. We had been keeping the same record without knowing it. The realization hit me sideways. 20 years is a long time to think you are alone in seeing something. I could hear, through the wall, the door close. Through the wall, very faintly, I heard Detective Whitfield's voice. Ms. Vance, can you explain why your phone IP matches the account origination IP for 9 of 11 fraudulent accounts opened in your sister's name? There was a pause. Then Vanessa's voice. Smaller now. I never used that mailbox. Then Detective Whitfield. This is your Instagram post from June of 2023. You are standing in front of the mailbox. The caption is yours. Would you like to revise your statement? There were 11 seconds of silence. Then Vanessa said, I want a lawyer. That was the end of her statement. Through the speakerphone on Detective Whitfield's desk, which had never been disconnected from my parents in Tampa, I could hear my mother stop breathing. I had not realized she was still on the line. I do not know how long she had been listening. Mom, I said into the phone calmly. You can hang up now. She did not hang up. But she did not say anything else either. That was the loudest she had ever been. Detective Whitfield came back into room 4B at 10:34 a.m. She closed the door. She sat down. She looked at me with the kind of look I had spent 20 years trying to earn from anyone in my family, and which had finally been offered to me by a stranger in a gray blazer. Ms. Vance, she said, I'm releasing you. Charges against you are being dropped pending paperwork. We will be opening a state investigation into your sister for forgery. identity theft, and filing a false police report. I will be referring this case to the United States Secret Service Field Office in Denver this afternoon for federal review of aggravated identity theft. You should expect to be contacted within the next 2 to 3 weeks for a follow-up statement. I nodded. Ms. Vance, she said more quietly, for what it's worth. I'm sorry it took 20 years. It was the first apology I had ever heard from someone in uniform. It was not the apology I had wanted my whole life, but it was the first one I had ever earned in front of my mother. Bram and I walked out of the interview room together. He carried the folder. He had insisted. He said it was now potential evidence in an active investigation and should be logged into chain of custody. The duty clerk made a copy of every page, returned the originals to Bram in a sealed envelope, and gave me a printed receipt with a case number. I folded the receipt and put it in the side pocket of my purse. In the hallway outside the booking area, my parents were waiting on the bench. My mother stood up when she saw me. Her face was wet. Her hands were shaking. She reached toward me. Audrey, please. We didn't know. We didn't know. I stopped about 4 feet away. I did not move closer. Mom, I said. You had Dr. Pritchard's letter for 20 years. You knew. She opened her mouth. She closed it. She sat back down on the bench. Her shoulders fell forward. She put her hands in her lap. She did not look at me again while I was in that hallway. I think she was, in that moment, doing the math she had spent 20 years refusing to do, counting back from the visitor sticker year by year, holiday by holiday, and seeing for the first time the shape of the wall she had built around herself with my name written on the bricks. My father walked past me 3 times in that hallway in the next 11 minutes. He did not say a word. He did not look at me. That was the loudest he had ever been. Vanessa was sitting alone on a metal bench by the booking desk. Her cardigan was rumpled. Her mascara had streaked. She was on her phone. She looked up at me as I walked past. She did not say anything. I did not say anything either. There was nothing left to say in that hallway that had not already been said in tab 3. By Friday of that week, the brand began to come apart. Someone, I never confirmed who, but I had a guess, had posted screenshots of the Vanessa to Beverly. If she keeps digging, we need to file first message to a wellness industry watchdog account on Instagram. Within 24 hours, the account had been shared 4,000 times. By Saturday, Instagram had restricted pure boundaries with Nessa. By the end of the month, the brand page was gone. TikTok followed a week later. The course at $389 was no longer available. The signature line, "My truth is sacred," was on a frozen page that simply read, "This account is no longer available." I received 4 direct messages that week from former customers of the course. Each of them had cut off a family member based on what they had learned from Nessa's content. Each of them was now asking, with varying degrees of polite horror, whether I thought they had made the wrong call. I read each message twice. I did not reply to any of them. I am not anyone's boundary coach. I did not owe them a verdict. But I sat with the question, for a long time, that some of them had cut off people who might have been worth keeping. That is the part of this story that does not get a happy ending. I cannot make those phone calls for them. I do not know how many real victims my sister had created on the way to becoming one she had invented. By the second week of April, the U.S. Secret Service had completed its review. A federal grand jury in the District of Colorado indicted Vanessa Vance on aggravated identity theft under 18 U.S.C. Section 1028A, plus state forgery charges from the Denver District Attorney. She was released on a $20,000 cash bond, which my parents signed for. The federal charge carried a mandatory minimum of 24 months consecutive. There would be a plea deal, eventually. There would not be a way out of all of it. I lost 2 weeks of work to administrative leave at Aspen Ridge after my employer was notified of the warrant. Once the charges were dropped, My supervisor reinstated me with a written apology that I did not need but appreciated. My ACFE credential was never in jeopardy. The credit bureau's dispute process took about 4 months and was, in the end, the most straightforward part of any of it. I had received my first uniformed apology. I had not received one from my father. I do not think I ever will. In early May, 2 months after the folder was opened, my mother sent me a text message. The message arrived at 6:22 p.m. on a Wednesday. It was 4 words. I think I knew. She added, a minute later, I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to hear it from me. I read it twice. I did not reply. I made tea. The kind my grandmother had liked. Peppermint with 1 slice of lemon. I sat at my kitchen counter and watched the late afternoon sun move across the floorboards. I thought about Dr. Pritchard. I thought about the small blue sticker. I thought about my grandmother, who could not remember my name, who would never know any of this had happened. If you have ever waited 20 years for someone to admit they knew, drop 1 word in the comments. Just 1. I will read every one of them. Boundaries don't always look like distance. Sometimes they look like a folder you finally get to put down. The following Saturday, Vivian drove down from Fort Collins. She had texted me a week earlier and asked, very gently, if I wanted to have dinner. I said yes. We met at a small bistro in Capitol Hill called Larimer and Vine. It is the kind of place with mismatched chairs and a chalkboard menu that nobody updates. I had not seen her in person since 2014. We ordered lasagna. We ordered a small glass of Cabernet each. We did not talk about Vanessa for the first 30 minutes. We talked about her dog, a small mutt named Marbles, who is afraid of the vacuum and not of thunderstorms. We talked about her brother, whom I had not seen in 6 years. We talked about the smell of Boulder in October. Eventually, she said, you know what I kept thinking that whole time? I kept thinking, what if she's keeping a folder too? And there you were. I laughed for the first time in 3 months. It was a small laugh, almost a breath, but it was real. For the first time, the folder was not the most important thing in the room. The person across from me was. That night, I drove home with the heater on low and the radio off. I parked in my building's garage. I rode the elevator up to my floor. I unlocked my door. I turned on 1 lamp. The banker's box was still on the top shelf of the hallway closet. I had not opened it since the day of